can't mention the company, somebody I'm helping out. They said it's a startup, been around for a year, it's in pharmaceuticals, and they were about to go on this procurement path of like, I gotta have Jira because X, Y, and Z, I have to track tickets. I'm like, you don't need Jira. A couple hours later, we built Jira with Agentic AI. I was a guest lecturer at St. Joe's University for their insurance seniors. A lot of them are going to brokers, agents, underwriters. The head of the department said, I want you to build them an agentic AI workflow of E&O, D&O policies coming in from email. Agentic AI picks it up, gets it all rated, the algorithms that you're going to put, just build a whole workflow from the broker sending it straight to a policy. Fine. During the Puppy Bowl, I built the whole application and workflow. I packaged it up with all the prompts. And I said, all you have to do is stick this document in Claude and it's going to go build what you just saw. And they were like, no way.
What I would like to just do is welcome my new friend, Mary Kotch, to the show. And Mary, a pleasure having you here today. And I just want to ask you, what got you interested in the intersection of humanity and technology?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'll take you back. So growing up in a very small town, and I'm thinking about, technology back in the 80s. What did my parents use? My dad was a mechanic. My mom was a nurse. She was in a hospital setting, long-term care, acute care. And I was very interested in hearing everything about like IBM and back then and personal computers and how that's going to change the world and humans. And we're going to be working with computers in the future. So for me, it was all about getting an education and then working with the technology. And so big Penn State family. So went to Penn State and knocked on every single professor's door and said, I'm here to help. I want to learn. I'll read your papers. I'll collect your information. I'll create databases. And one professor saw the spark in me and he's like, yeah, let me teach you SPSS. Let me teach you Fortran. Let me teach you these technologies. And you could absolutely hand key in all this research, right? That's how I started my career in how I look at technology and changing the world, the whole world, and I got to live through, as you did, the internet boom and what was before the internet. And we didn't have email when I was at Penn State. We had snail mail. But the fun part of where I am today to where I was, I've seen so much good come out of technology and how technology is changing everything we do. So
There has been one thing that's constant in like the world of technology, and it's change. And so like you're highlighting some of the points that we hit on, like that snail mail to email, like the pre-internet days to everything available at your fingertips, having to sit in front of the computer to having a cell phone that has all the power of our old desktops. What are the changes that you're excited for today?
yeah, so I left my C-level role last year, and I've been doing consulting, and I work with a venture capital company, C10 Labs, so as an AI fellow, and I get to work with like startup companies, seed like they're seed based. They've got great ideas and great inventions, and artificial intelligence is behind their product. Um, and I'm working now with healthcare and pharmaceutical companies and how artificial intelligence is changing everything from running your clinical trials, with artificial intelligence to products that really can change. And I'll describe one company, one product, which I'm really was interested in when I met them recently. It's a Hispanic gentleman from Chile who created a product because his grandmother, who was 65 in America, doesn't speak English, uses WhatsApp, and is really having a problem keeping up with her medications. And so he created an app for a Hispanic population. By 2030, 119 million people in the United States will be 65 or older in that Hispanic population. And he created an app that that community uses WhatsApp, and she gets an alert, and she could say it's a reminder, but in a nice way. Like, I'm here to remind you to take your medicine at 1 because we love you and we don't want to see anything happen to you, right? So I'm meeting so many great startup companies that want to change healthcare. And and to help us. I know a lot of us are not, it's hard to read our technical charts. It's hard to understand, a diagnosis. It's hard to even understand our insurance policies, right? So I'm meeting a lot of startup companies that really want to change humanity through artificial intelligence, and not a scary way. I think, AI sometimes tends to scare people. Do you trust it? Can you trust it? How much human intervention is needed? So, but that's what I'm doing today. But started with artificial intelligence back in 2007 with MetLife and IBM Watson. Um,
Okay.
so, so I have quite the tenure in seeing all this AI grow up.
It is. I think probably my first interaction with AI was, or coined AI, and I can't remember what it was basically doing the small neural networks to do handwriting analysis, and that was in the early 2000s. But you just saw that we didn't have the compute and we didn't have the data sets available to actually do anything interesting with it. So
Mhm.
seeing what we've come to today has been fascinating. But back to what you were talking about with healthcare, are you seeing, like, where are you seeing the changes kind of come about? Like, we're talking about fascinating ideas of people able to impact their families' lives, able to kind of like help to organize, help to make sense of this complex system of healthcare that we live in. Uh, where are you seeing the change that you want to see?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing in startup companies, but I also work at a healthcare company doing fractional data science and AI work. It's preventative, so we'll start there. So,
Okay.
how do we look at data, medical information coming in, claims information coming in, and how do you predict through artificial intelligence the next visit or doctor's visit? How do you put risk mitigation services ahead of preventing that person to go get another pill, to go have another claim back to an insurance company, right? So
Yeah.
AI is great for predicting that and then handing it to a doctor or a nurse, call the patient and get ahead of another visit, right? So insurance companies like that, but also on the flip side, so do clinicians. So AI is great at aggregating that data and giving that perspective, and then a human picks it up and can make that phone call. Um, I think from a wearables perspective, right? So there's a lot of tech where, you go into a hospital and you could see somebody wearing something, or it's off of, most hospitals today, if you have been in one, the carts are moving around and the laptops are on the cart and everything is wireless. But there's gadgets that are hanging off of it, right? Collecting information. So I think, again, where I see the technology headed with artificial intelligence is to collect that voice, to collect the video, the interaction with the patients, and being able to give real time to doctors, nurses, others, like, here's what I see. I'm AI, but I'm collecting as you're speaking, and I'm going to give you a perspective of what I'm hearing to guide and coach the nurse, the clinician, the doctor back into asking some questions. And I think this is all under an umbrella of like preventable care, like preventing the next thing to happen. How do you use these models to collect that information as fast as I just said it, and be able to come out with another set of questions to assist with patient care? So um, lots of really cool stuff, apps, devices. I met a guy, and he said, "Here's what's interesting in um, Israel right now. The Israel government, for the elderly population, they give the population a lamp. It looks like a lamp. Okay, it looks like a small little lamp that you could put right next to your couch, but there's AI in it, and it checks on the elderly. The government like had this big program and created this technology and handed it out to their elderly population during COVID because it was a scary time. And if you didn't have family or friends, it was a way to check in on the elderly to see if they were okay. And the elderly can ask it questions and the government can intervene. I mean, that's really cool. Now, some people might say, well, that's intrusive, but I mean, I think we're going to see so much happen so fast with preventative care, risk mitigation services through artificial intelligence, if us humans want to adapt it, right? And then we're not
100%,
scared of
right? Like, and there's this interesting paradigm that we're finding, and I'll just share a story of like what we're doing is we're going towards being a dark factory for software, right? And if you're familiar with the four phases of that, we're in between three and four right now, which is effectively like we are logging issues, they are getting into production without a human touch kind of thing. We feel comfortable with that process and effectively have gone from like let's say a team of 10 to a team of 100 engineers as far as the throughput goes. But as I'm sitting here looking at like where does the human fit in this process? And the one place that I feel that we can't pull the human out is that judgment, where there needs to be that decision of judgment, where there is the context isn't clear around why you would go one way or the other, but you still want the AI to be presenting you with the information, collecting the information, distilling it into spaces, but it needs to be that point of judgment. And then the other side is we can see the technology go this way, but I do think adoption may have a slower curve to it in some capacity
Mhm.
because you and I can only adopt so much change at any one time.
Mhm.
Where do you see both the adoption curve going and how do you see the impact of AI on that adoption curve?
Okay, so I like this question. I think there's different generations, companies run by different generations, and we're going to have a very large generation retiring soon, the baby boomers. And I think at major corporations, you have certain industry sectors that are pretty old school in thinking about AI. They might be at a board meeting and they're saying, "Well, what do we do about it?" And we'll turn Copilot on and check, we've got AI, right?
Ugh.
I think once this baby boomer generation retires, it's going
Yeah.
to open up a flood of us, our generation, generation below us, to really change industries, processes. Insurance is riddled with layers of people, and you need a broker and an agent to get a policy. Why? Why do you need all these layers? And an underwriter, right? I think we're going to see very, very quickly, once that generation gives up, retires, a new generation coming in and saying, man, we could use this AI for improving everything. But now here's what I do see today: we don't have enough trainers in AI. So if you take certain people that are very good at communication, they like tech, you get them well trained in AI. We need more people in companies, not on the service desk, but getting people to use artificial intelligence, right? And there are some companies today that are saying and watching who's using Copilot, and it's in their objectives, right? To use it more, you're not using it. But if the companies I've been at and the companies I'm consulting at, there's still a huge gap in how to use it, how to use Copilot, what's it good for, how has your IT engineers actually set it up the right way so you can find documents, right? You could hit your warehouse using Azure Synapse and that semantic layer to pull data, right? I just think there's a gap in companies today that are heavily reliant on engineers, and they don't look at it with a data lens. And I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn about this. You need to have a good data background to work with artificial intelligence. The engineering pieces are critical, but data is more critical than the engineering. And and then you've got your cyber, right? So if you can find somebody that has all three and has lived through lots of different, generations of tech, great. But I was on a call this morning and helping with a problem, and there was not one data, not one cyber, and just a bunch of engineers. So,
It's so interesting because I've always seen the engineering aspect of this to be something of a data problem, right? In any business system that you're looking at, it's always what data is going in, what data is going out, what are you doing to that data, and then additionally, how does it flow, right? Like what decisions need to be made. And so to hear you say that it's literally just engineers with no data perspective is significant. But I do want to touch on the cybersecurity challenge as well. Um, the Copilot, the Copilot's Copilot, and I'm sure that it will get better, and I'm sure that it is actually solving a lot of problems for people. And there was a recent study released saying that the same model can produce 6 times the results as uh, the same model based on the harness that it's in. Um, then you look at Mythos, which is coming out in the near future, and they have not been able to keep it in a container that it could. And it also discovered, what was it, a bug in FreeBSD that was there for the last 27 years.
Mhm.
And for our audience, FreeBSD is an operating system that's used by most Fortune 500 companies in their servers. And so everybody would have exposure to this. And now we're talking about models that can find issues faster than you can fix them.
Mhm.
Um, are we ready for this? Are most corporations ready for this level of like change that can occur?
No, I mean, we'd have to look at. Sorry,
Oh,
we'd have to look
cool.
at. Yeah, sorry. We'd have to look at companies like Jamie Dimon. A couple months ago, he was on stage and he was asked the question around cybersecurity. Sorry.
It's okay.
Um, and he goes, I spend billions and I don't have one tech company, I have hundreds. And I have lots of large language models. So, I mean, he's a guy that knows how important cyber is in protecting his data. But companies aren't ready. And there's a lot of companies that still are running IMS, VSAM for, just old crappy systems, back office, and insurance is riddled with it. Um, but you're spot on. I think large language models, like I recently have put in Claude to do discovery inside a company's cloud. I put Claude in on AWS and Bedrock, protected it, and then instructed Claude to go look for all sorts of cybersecurity concerns. You could also use Claude to do agentic pen testing continuously, right? So there's a lot of power in just Claude 4.6 or 4.7 in helping you find out where your vulnerabilities are that your tools you're relying on might not be accurate, right? Because a human set up those tools. It's only as good as a human configured it and set it up, right? So I think the companies aren't ready. There's not enough cybersecurity professionals with an AI background, with a data background, and we're not in education in colleges. How do you train the next generation of cybersecurity professionals? Right? What certifications are they coming out with? Hands-on experience, right? So, the classes I teach at Penn State are very hands-on. Like we're in malware. I'm teaching them, how to ignite it, how to look at it, how to find out what it does to computer systems, their operating systems, all the way down to the kernel. So, I think we need to upskill fast. We need to take certain generations, upskill them, give them new roles, train the heck out of people. But trainers are critical to the AI adoption. Um, I mean, take half your service desk and use agentic AI and automate the heck out of everything and turn all those people into AI trainers is what I would do.
I
And
think
make,
that's a fun little project that we're all kind of figuring out right now is what does digital transformation look like in the AI world? And how do you take the people who are either A, not comfortable with it and give them that upskilling, and then the people who can run with it, give
yeah,
them enough to be able to go ahead, full steam.
yep,
The other thing we're noticing is like we work with some small organizations, we work with, some larger organizations, and we offer a tool that is somewhat somewhat similar to Copilot, somewhat similar to Cowork, but it basically sits agnostic to any of the platforms it integrates into it, right?
okay,
And we see adoption from people who like absolutely amazing, right? And then we see some people who are still using it kind of like a little Google,
yeah.
and it's helping them to do what they need to do, but at the same time, it does it. Um, where I'm going with this though is the impact of what we're seeing with small teams can sometimes be larger than what we're seeing with the enormous teams. So when you start getting into the hundreds, 200 people, the organization has a bigger change ahead of it in how it's delegating work and assigning responsibility to teams that are AI forward. What are you seeing in the world of like how organizations will change and be impacted by their agentic flows?
So, okay, so let's start with some organizations, obviously, companies are hiring chief AI officers. And if the larger the organization, the more complex. The people I talk to, they're breaking down the company by department, creating super users, training super users, representing those departments, having those departments create use cases, and then embedding the AI agentic engineers into the business. So it's a pod approach. Okay. So I've lots of companies are trying that out. Some are trying to do centralized and pulling it away from the business and saying, just give us your requirements and we'll go build something for you. And a lot of failures with that. So you could read a lot about AI's failing in corporate America. Well, I think it really depends on the industry, the sector you're in, how well you're training your employees in order to get ready for it. And that's like top down and bottom up at the same time. Deepika Chopra is somebody who I'm on her company's board. She's wrote the book Align Fast, and she's out there getting companies using her framework ready to take on AI in the companies. And I think you need that trainer evangelist in your company doing that while you figure out what's the best way to get adoption pushed down and start using AI. And all these productivity tools are different. I found I was speaking at a women's conference last week. You have to spend more time with the tech. Like, what is Gemini good at? What is Copilot good at? What is Claude? All these productivity tools. What are they all good at? What aren't they good at? You know, Gemini, if you are a trainer, a corporate trainer, and you saved a video and you want to get the video transcripts and you want to create a rich avatar with content overlay, Gemini's not good at that. You're going to need the transcript fed to Gemini. You're going to need probably Hey Gen on top of that for the avatar. Like, you really had to play with it to know what's the right productivity tool for your department and your workflows, right? So not one, my whole point of that is one size doesn't fit all. And then I find in the industry, like, there's so many great, well-trained models out there that you can use for cybersecurity, like Llama with XBoost as your machine learning algorithm to do predictive cybersecurity. But most people don't know that. They gravitate to like one big model and think that's going to solve their problems. It goes back to data. What models have what data, right?
You're hitting on a really core point, right? Like, we've gone through and changed up the model. One does build. We have a different model that will do the PR review as well, because you tend to have, if you have one model that does every task, you get the same kind of like perspective from each model that goes through. But like you're saying, find the best tool for the job.
That's right.
Like every model is trained a little bit differently, is geared towards some different approach, has some paradigm or bias built into it that will help you go through. So yeah, that's absolutely fascinating to think about. That we need to be looking at our models not as like one size fits all, but like, this is the job, this is the purpose.
That's right.
And then bring it back to the organization. It's somewhat interesting because, like, I remember when I think we're probably around the same age, similar as and coming up, when I first got my first like CTO role, it was right around the time where the technology was changing fast enough to where you knew that you had to push decision making down in the organization, and that your CTO couldn't be someone that knew everything, and it just had to be someone that knew the process and was able to lay that out for the organization to kind of go. And I had a mentor that shared with me that she goes, as a leader, you have a gun and it's always pointed at your head and it has one bullet in it and your finger is on the trigger. When you make a decision is when you pull the trigger.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's an interesting way. She goes, you don't own the decision, you own the decision-making process.
Mm.
So what you need to get to is figuring out what that process is so that you, like, the team feels comfortable in taking ownership of what they're doing. What I'm seeing now is the AI world is changing so fast, and additionally, the applications are coming more from a bottom-up kind of perspective, that you need to be able to push the tools and push the not responsibility, but the creative expression of it into the business units and into like as deep into the organization as you can. But like you're saying, training the trainer and having trainers in there that can help people express their ideas and their creativity is an incredibly powerful model to be following. What else would you offer up to any organizations that are looking to see a better AI implementation come forward?
Yeah, so I can't mention the company. Somebody I'm helping out. They said it's a startup, been around for a year. It's in pharmaceuticals, and they were about to go on this procurement path of like, I got to have Jira because X, Y, and Z. I have to track tickets. I'm like, you don't need Jira. And a couple hours later, we built Jira, right, with Agentic AI, right? So I think again the how good, like just working with Claude Opus 4.7 code, in my experience, it's like I could sit there during the Puppy Bowl. I'll give you a great example. I was a guest lecturer at St. Joe's University for their insurance seniors. That was, a lot of them are going to brokers, agents, underwriters, and the head of the department said, "I want you to build them an agentic AI workflow of E&O, D&O policies coming in from email. Agentic AI picks it up, gets it all rated." From the algorithms that you're going to put, just build a whole workflow from the broker sending it straight to a policy. Fine. During the Puppy Bowl, I built the whole application and workflow connected to my email, even what the deal sheets look like, real looking live deal sheets, the rater, everything. Right now, you're talking about wiping out SaaS providers, right, in that industry. But the point of me doing that and getting it working was, these students are going to graduate as they are now, and they're going to get into an insurance company, and maybe some of those insurance companies are so old their green screens still running around. Their underwriting platform crashes, right, on a daily basis, or it's an Excel sheet. And now she wanted them to come out with the code. So I packaged it up with all the prompts. And I said, all you have to do is stick this document in Claude, and it's going to go build what you just saw. And they were like, no way. Right. And I sat there during the Puppy Bowl going, no way. Right. So I think it's so awesome what you can do today. You're the architect, the project manager, the business analyst. You're giving it requirements. You're connecting it in your cloud. You're connecting it to your email. You don't need 100 roles, right? You need a really good brain, a good development life cycle. All these roles count, quality assurance, testing, blah, blah, blah. But it's so cool today what you can do. And that it wasn't that way 15 months ago.
No, we've flipped a corner
I
in
mean,
the
the paradigm
last
went from
month.
like, right? So, so to answer your question, it's changing everything. I think that the bigger the companies, it's going to be harder for them to adopt. The smaller, mid-size, depending on regulatory compliance, other hospitals were still highly regulated, but the tech is so good. It's just going to more startups, more great inventions, more ideas. But the idea of having software as a service from big companies, if I were them, I would worry.
Oh, there was a similar thing happened a few months ago.
Mhm.
An anchor on CNBC gets on and says, "Hey, I got onto Claude Code and I built Monday.com in 2 hours."
Right.
And it wiped $200 billion off of SaaS companies that day.
Yeah.
Now, there's a big difference between like, hey, I did this in 2 hours and then supporting millions of users kind of perspective. But at the same time, software is becoming so personalized to fit your needs and your niche.
Yeah.
And then add on top of that, like, this is an old Microsoft Word statistic that like 95% of features are never touched in Microsoft Word by like 98% of the user population.
Yeah.
And that like we all just use it to open a doc, edit a few things, maybe use a heading, maybe change some stuff, but like 95% of the features are never touched. So there's all this software bloat that gets in there for the entire population.
Right.
But today the price of execution on software is incredibly cheap,
Yeah.
that it's going to be, how do you get your personalization? How do you bring it to the forefront of what you're doing? And that's that is an amazing thing. Uh,
Let me go back to answer your question though. If
yeah,
a big size company, whatever, Fortune 500, the individuals that are ready for retirement but are going to be there for 5 more years, I would pull some out. I would get them super trained. They know the business, they know the workflow, they know the data, and get them super trained in AI to help push this generation to start using it, but also to give it to the next generation to build the agentic workflows that are going to be needed. Okay.
yeah.
I think you pull those people out and give them a great, because they've been managing the business, making millions of dollars, right? So give them an opportunity to work with the next generation coming in and build that AI. That's something I would do.
Have
Um,
you seen any hiring changes and like any trends in hiring that have changed given like how AI is being adopted in organizations?
Yes, and the challenge we have, even in the big five, Deloitte, other, there's not enough trainers, right? So you're going to bring in newly graduates from universities, but they weren't trained really well in those universities. They don't have good training programs to get them into how to use like a Claude code to develop. They're not, so the training is so critical to bring that next generation in. And that's why, I talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people are like, well, I'm using X consulting company and they said that I need 5 engineers to do this. I'm like, no, you don't need 5 engineers to, and you're building a data product. You're not building like an application UI or something. You need data people, right? So it's such a mixed bag of what's happening out there, and we see a lot of people like the internet boom. I'm an engineer. I'm here for a company in 1 year, but then I'm going to go over here. I got all my training, and now I'm going to go over here and make another $50,000, right? So there's a lot of job hopping all over the place. As soon as you get that engineering and you got a good trainer behind you and you got your hands into it and you could see how awesome it is, people are job hopping like crazy.
It's entertaining. Um, because it definitely where I was going to go with this is it's an interesting avenue because we are in such a hot space. And I know in 2013, I had a developer on my team. He was a seasoned veteran. This is in the Midwest, and he was making like 70 grand a year. But what he showed me was that he had an understanding of responsive design better than most people did at that time. And I was like, I pulled him aside and go, I'm going to tell you this because you need to know that this is kind of your heyday right now. And everybody is looking for the skills that you're demonstrating. And in fact, they're paying about $250 an hour for that. And even if you went with a recruiting company, you make half of that, whatever. But like, you still are leaving about like 2/3 of your salary on the table on the low side. And he stayed, but at the same time, I feel like we are in that kind of like heyday of what it is to be good at AI and what it is to know how to implement it, know how to execute it. And if you have that engineering background, you're there. How are companies looking to retain that talent after that? Because you can't go through and continue to extend out, $50,000 raises to people every year after they complete 1 year with you. But there's got to be other ways that companies are looking to retain that talent on a
Yeah,
regular.
they're doing things like unlimited time off, and so that's a huge win. Obviously, all the benefits you get, equity, but you know, eh, I think we have to look at it more strategically. My personal opinion, and how we take individuals and upgrade them, upskill them, and put the time and effort into it. It just seems like I'm seeing so many companies going, I want to buy this person and stick them here, and there's not a good strategy, right? On the thinking in corporate America. I think startups are different. Tech companies are different. Obviously, they're spending, they're shedding their own workforce in a certain way, and investing in what the next 5 years is going to look like and how technology is going to change. So um, I don't. It's not a good answer. I don't think there's like one good
There's
answer.
not a one size fit all kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mary, what advice would you have for people listening to the show that we haven't had to share yet?
Yeah, it was advice I just gave to somebody today, who was a startup company. They were told, by their investment backers, they're going to need 200 people, this offshore team, and I just went, let's go slow. So a couple hours later, the 200 engineers, you don't need. You need a very good, like, two people data science background. You need somebody who understands machine learning because they want the data to learn. They don't just want it to, ask, prompt it, get your questions back. It's a very sophisticated model. And so I think the best advice is to slow yourselves down, figure out, if you're a startup company, what exactly you're using AI for. If you're in a big corporation, really separate productivity gains versus taking costs out using AI to take out systems, right? Take out the Jiras and the other systems in IT, take out certain offshore teams because you could automate more. You have to have a practical approach to how you want to run it inside your company. And put some thought into it. Run your own current state. Well, I got 500 people offshore. What do they do? Document it. If we're going to use AI, can we get rid of these resources, right? So I think old school a little bit. You got to slow yourselves down. You don't need to bring in a big five firm to do that. It's just understanding your current business operations, documenting your business models, your workflows, your systems, your people, what time they spend, and all that data you could collect today from your current state. Then you could run that through a large language model and have a whole bunch of fun, like asking it questions around how you can, remodel your company and save money. So that's what I tell people today.
Again, Mary, thank you so much for being on the show with
Yeah,
us.
you're welcome.